For this video, I want to focus on the software. So I've already turned the machine on, following the prompts, following the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, the blue stickers. And now I'm going to turn on I'm going to open the Zen Blue software. And you're going to see 3 choices. You're going to have Zen Pro, Zen Image Processing, and Zen Light. For using the system for imaging, you're going to want to open Zen Pro. So the system is initializing. I'm going to just adjust slightly. And so the message that's coming up, I hope this is going to be clear enough, is saying calibrate now or skip calibration. You always want to calibrate before you begin. You want the computer to communicate with the system so that it knows where the position of all of the parts. So make sure that the system is on, and if the person that used it last has put it back into 10x as required, you should have no problem. But before you hit calibrate, make sure that you're checking that there's nothing impeding the stage, that you have no samples on the stage. So the path of the stage should be clear. So I'm going to click calibrate now, and it takes a moment. All right, so now we're calibrated. So now I want to just show you the left bar and the right bar of this software and what tools there are available. All right, so when I start, I always start on the left with the Locate tab. Under the Locate tab, you have all of the different objectives and colors that you can use. You have the microscope control, you have the camera control, you have software autofocus, and you have the recorder, and you have a live panorama. You have all of these features. What I usually do for Locate, the only thing I use Locate for is when I begin, I look for the sample under 10x using the Locate tab. So here under microscope control, I will click onto the eyepiece icon at the bottom, and then I will use the Bright Field tab at the top. I'm sorry, I should have started with Bright Field and then Eyepiece, so that now I can use the eyepiece to view my specimen and get it into focus at 10x. So once I've done that, then I can go into acquisition mode, and now I will use acquisition to actually do image acquisition using the fluorescent filters. So when you get to acquisition, you're going to use this top experiment bar, and under that, MicroOptics has set up already set up 2 experiments. They should cover everyone. So the first one, you could use Daffy, GFP, Psi3, and Cherry, Psi5, and Phase 2 and Phase 3. You can use any of those to do your experiment. That's the one that I use. So I'm going to choose that first experiment. This is where you're going to start. All right. Underneath that, you're going to see autofocus, set exposure, live, continuous, and snap. I don't use the continuous. I don't use the autofocus either. I don't use anything but the live and the snap on this bar. Set exposure, that I set myself during the imaging when I'm doing the work. And the fine focus, I found it myself. It does an autofocus. It takes a while. If you use it with any color, it's going to bleach out your sample. I don't usually use that. Well, then underneath that this experiment now, the next part is the experiment part. So whether you're doing a Z-stack or you're doing tiles or you're doing a time series, you will use this area. But before I show you this, I want to show you, so the imaging setup, I would please do not change this. This is set up for the right channels, the right pathways, the right camera. I just wanted to show you it's there. What you're going to want to use is the acquisition mode. You might want to change depending on how much binning you want, how much gain you want, and what kind of post-processing measures you're doing. But for the basics, you will not need to change anything in acquisition mode. For channels, you will be using this. This is what you're going to be using depending on what your samples are labeled with. All right, so under channels, you're going to see DAPI, you're going to see GFP twice. There is GFP as part of the Colibri dial, and then there is GFP as a separate filter cube. If you're having trouble with bleed through between DAPI and GFP or rhodomine and GFP, you're going to want to use the GFP2 cube. So let's say I am interested in blue nuclei with DAPI and I have a GFP labeled membrane. I am only going to have DAPI and GFP checked, and I'm going to click off the other colors. You can choose whatever you're going to be, whatever you want in your experiment, whatever you want in your overlay. Those are the colors you're going to choose. All right, and so I'll have those selected. The reference is going to be what you want the focus to reference. All right. So if you want DAPI to be what the software uses as the focal plane and as the reference for color, you're going to click on DAPI for reference. Whatever is, and again, this is going to be experiment specific. Then you're going to want, so that's the experimental setup, acquisition mode. When you then view your specimen, you're going to hit live, and I'm going to hit live here, but there's going to be nothing under, I don't have a specimen today. So I'm going to just hit live, and what will happen is you will see the live view of what's there. And right now I don't have anything under this on the stage, so I have no color there. But if I did, I would then click on just DAPI. So whatever is highlighted is going to be the color or the excitation emission wavelengths for DAPI when I have that highlighted. And then down here, you can change you can either use auto exposure or you can change your exposure. After you set this bar, either by auto exposure or by the slide bar, you do not need to do anything more. That's where it will stay when you click snap. If you set exposure, then it sets it by itself and it changes what you wanted down here. So only set your exposure here. And then you go to your other channel, you'll go to your other excitation emission wavelength for GFP, and you will do the same thing. You will set your desired exposure, your desired setting. Once that is done, you can just click snap, and you will get your, so I'm going to stop this, I'm going to click snap, and then you're going to get your final image, which there is nothing under this, on the stage right now, so you won't see anything here. But then under channels, there's something called focus strategy. All right. So this really comes into play not typically for just one to acquire still images, but it comes into play when you are doing long time series, potentially with VStack. All right. So software autofocus will work during a time series when you are at the 10x, the 20x, or the 40x objectives. All right, but when you get to 60 or 100x objectives, you're going to want to use the definite focus. All right, so software autofocus comes in. You're going to use this when you are doing a time series, because the focus tends to shift, and you're going to want to do it in autofocus. So then under software autofocus, if you are doing this, what I found is that you are going to want to change some of these sampling settings to tailor to your experiment. When you have full and fine with the default settings, it will stay, the autofocus will run too long, and it will have the excitation wavelength on your sample too long, and it will bleach your sample over time. You want to make it a little bit more a less fine adjustment for the software autofocus, and use medium or a coarse adjustment. And then the final tab is just giving you the experiment information, and this is the information that will go along with the file as you're working with it. So that's the left bar. Processing and analysis I have not used yet. As I get to those, I will make more videos. On the right bar, the first line, as you acquire images and then time series and experiments, they will start to build up here. You can see the 2 blank images that I've taken so far. Under that, you'll have project layers. This I have not used yet, so I will let you know when I do. But under that, it gives you the microscope. Now, this is where you can control the microscope and change objectives. You can change objectives either using this or the control that's under the microscope. Do not manually change anything on the microscope except for the focus. So 10x, this is where it should always be when you start and when you end. We have 10x objective, we have a 20x objective, we have a 40x objective, which is a long working distance lens. This will work with plastic. It does not work very well with the glass. For most imaging experiments, you are going to want to purchase dishes that have a 1.5 millimeter borosilicate glass bottom, or use those as, or grow your cells on microscope slide covers that are of that thickness. 1.5 millimeter is the optimal for use. If you have any questions, you can ask me, and I can give you some vendors to purchase the appropriate dishes to use with this imaging system. 63x is oil. We have a 63x oil, we have a 100x oil, and we have with phase, and we have just a 100x oil with interfering contrast. Underneath, you have, again, the ability to take any one of these objectives and click 1.6, and then you will get a 1.6 greater magnification on top of your objective magnification. There is a stage control. This is moving. You can move the stage using this on the computer, or you can use the joystick, which is under the screen, which is under the the monitor here. I like to use the joystick. You want it, we have it, I think, at a slow speed so that you don't, move things very quickly. When you're moving the stage, make sure that you don't have anything blocking or impeding the movement of the stage. Under that is focus. So again, focus control. You can control focus using the computer. I like to use either the focusing knob on the module underneath the monitor, or actually the focusing knob on the microscope itself. And then you have the definite focus control under that. The definite focus control, you can store the focus position, typically going to be used during a tile and a time series so that you're always on the same focal plane. And below the definite focus pane, you have the incubation setting. Right now, we have the heating unit working, and so it says H unit. There's several units that we can have here, but we have the H unit XL, and if you click on that box, it's set for 37 degrees. If you click on that box, that will turn on, and you will hear it starting, and you want to make sure that the microscope, that all the plexiglass doors are closed while it's heating. I'm going to turn it back off so it's not heating for no reason. We don't have the CO2 set up just yet. I will be working on that soon, but we do have a CO2 ability to set the CO2 for long-term time series imaging. So just let me go back one step to the, so that's the right bar. I'm going to go back one step to the left bar and just show you that when you want to do, let's say you want to do a Z-stack, after you set everything up down below, you have the channel set up, your focus strategy, you might want to set up after you set up your experiment. So if you have Z-stack, the Z-stack menu will then appear on the bar. It won't be there until you actually click Z-stack in the experiment setup. And so what I typically do is I use the center feature. So what I will do is I will focus on my sample. I will acquire what I want to be the center of the Z-stack and then click center. There'll be another video that will discuss, your range, but you can set up the range, what the range around that center you want to be, how deep you want, how large of a Z-stack you want to set up, how many slices you want in that Z-stack, and then it will set the interval for you, or you can set the interval yourself. If you want to do a time series, you will just click time series, and then the time series menu will pop up on the left, and you can then set your cycle number, your interval number, and then you would want to also make sure that you use a focus strategy, either autofocus if you're below 60x, 63x, or using definite focus if you are above if you are at 63x or above. So that is a basic overview of software. So I hope that this will be helpful. When I do some more work, I will set up some more videos.